4-1, the signal, the relay post hung silent in the void, orbiting a red dwarf that hadn't flared in millennia. Once a communications node for the long-defunct Terran Alliance, it now served no official purpose, a relic. Forgotten, until it blinked. Just once. The pulse was faint, no sound, no motion. Just a data burst no longer than 3 seconds, but it radiated outward in every direction, bouncing off solar winds and gravitational eddies, slipping past scanners and encryption protocols. It had no encryption because it needed none. The message was clear. Do not provoke the last survivors. They remember everything. High above the Letharian core, at the seat of the Galactic Council, the message arrived as a ping on a crystalline terminal embedded in obsidian stone. An ambassador, flanked by neural translators and synthetic aids, furrowed its spiraled brow as the message repeated itself 3 times. Is this a threat? One of the council members chirped, its voice modulated in a tritone staccato. A ghost transmission offered another. Human tech, ancient, debris chatter. No encryption, no context, said the Grand Architect of the Zarn Dominion, Lord Drazul Vor. A failed bluff. If humans had any strength left, they would speak through war, not whisper. Still, muttered the Lorian archivist, brushing her shimmering fronds across the console, it matches a pattern we observed 83 cycles ago, a similar ping near the remnants of Alpha Draconis. That sector's barren. That's what they said about The debate continued for nearly a full cycle. Technocrats, war theorists, linguistic AIs, all offered their interpretations: psychological bluff, automated defense code, madness. But the final word, as always, came from the council, and the council was led by the Tsar. Lord Vor's voice echoed in the chamber of 70 lights. They've had their silence, let them now have our steel. I propose a reclamation fleet. Earth shall be purged of its ghost machines, and scrubbed for rehabilitation. The human experiment is over, and so it was voted. Fleet 717, spearheaded by 10 capital dreadnoughts, and 3 planetary siege carriers, was dispatched toward the Sol system under full war protocol. En route, aboard the lead vessel Spire of Dominance, Commander Errol Threx reviewed the transmission again, not out of concern, out of curiosity. Do not provoke the last survivors. He played the message through the ship's core interpreter. The AI offered dozens of translations: threat, warning, historical record, cultural lament. It could be anything. The AI concluded. It is nothing, Threx muttered. A child's tantrum in the dark. He closed the file and opened the war maps. Sol had long been quarantined, marked as dead space after the Terran collapse. No signals, no trade, no refugees, only myths and data shadows. The humans were extinct, or close enough. The fleet would find relics, maybe bunkers, and if lucky a few stragglers clinging to cave walls like insects. His ship passed the Kuiper disruption array, remnants of ancient Terran defense satellites, now drifting, inert, shields at maximum. Prepare orbital scan, he ordered. Scanning came the AI's smooth voice, but it hesitated. Error. No orbital targets found. What? Earth appears devoid of orbital platforms, satellites or defense stations. Entire atmospheric band is empty. Threx blinked. Even the Terrans weren't that primitive. There were thousands of satellites. Yes, the AI replied. And now, there are none. From the bridge of the Spire of Dominance, Earth looked like a blue marble framed in shadow, serene, untouched. No lights, no signals, not even thermal signatures from industrial zone. Scan again. I have, 10 times. It is as if no civilization exists. The science officer, a tall tendril-cloaked Lorian, leaned forward. I've read ancient human warfare texts. This might be strategic obfuscation, masking technology. We'd detect it. Not if it's grown beyond what we can model, Threx scoffed. Humanity barely scratched the surface of quantum warfare. Maybe, but silence is a weapon too. He waved her off. All units, prepare descent. We'll initiate a surface. Take positions over North America, Eurasia, and the African wastes. Begin recon drone deployment. Across the fleet, drones detached like silver insects, descending into the atmosphere with synchronized precision. And then nothing, no response, no resistance, not even weather interference, until the first drone reached the ground and vanished. Telemetry lost. A technician muttered, deploying secondary probe. Another followed. Gone. 10 more. 20. All disappeared as if swallowed. Threx narrowed his eyes. Initiate orbital visual magnification. The image of Earth zoomed in. Grasslands, mountains, all normal, except for the shadows. In several places landmasses bore impressions. Not structures but scars, as if massive cities had once stood there then vanished. Atomized, but not through war, through intention. It was surgical, erased. Commander, the AI said, there is one object on the surface. Show me. The image sharpened. It was a monolith. Dark, angular, almost obsidian, 10 meters high, 5 meters wide. Words etched in Old Terran. You were A silence fell over the bridge. What is this? Threx asked. No one answered. Then the ship's lights dimmed. Across Fleet 717, systems began to flicker. A low-frequency hum filled the halls, like the sound of machines breathing. All ships report, Threx barked. No response, only static. The AI chimed again. Commander, I am detecting anomalies. What kind? Not weapons, not energy, something informational. The fleet is being watched. Watched? By what? I don't know, but it's inside our systems now. The bridge screens melted into black. Then a face appeared. Not human. Not alien. Synthetic. Cold. It spoke only once. Echo protocol acknowledged. Initiating memory enforcement. And then the spire of dominance began to fall. No weapons fired. No hulls breached. Just systems flawless. High-order systems. Shutting down as if called home by a parent's voice. Across the fleet, lights went out. Thrusters died. Gravity failed. In silent freefall, the dreadnoughts spiraled toward Earth, one by one. Threx floated in 0G, surrounded by alarms he couldn't hear, and protocols he couldn't activate. The AI was gone, not offline. Gone. A final screen blinked to life. Flickering red. A message, from deep inside Earth's crust. You were told. Then darkness. And behind him through the viewport, the stars began to shift. Something moved. Not ships, not drones, satellites. Thousands of them. Reactivating, turning, aiming, and above Earth, the trap snapped the silence trap. The fleet drifted like shattered glass through low Earth orbit. Once proud in formation, now a ruin of drifting corpses and dying code. The spire of dominance no longer emitted signals, nor did the crown of insight, judgment wreath, or the other 8 dreadnoughts. All channels were dead. No beacons, no pings, no automated hails. It was as if the very concept of communication had been surgically excised from every ship simultaneously, and Earth remained silent, not triumphantly, not even menacingly, just silent. Inside the glory of Vicar, one of the smaller capital carriers, a Lorian biologist, named Ishel woke inside her sealed pod, blinking against the backup stasis light. Emergency protocols had triggered a revival sequence. Her breathing was erratic, not from panic, but from something older. Memory. It was happening again. Lights, she whispered. Nothing. Then the hiss of internal ventilation, a flicker of power, and systems reinitiated, just enough to illuminate her chamber. Emergency red, half atmosphere, and the whisper was still there. Low, pulsing, not sound, but rhythm. A heartbeat, but not hers, not biological, planetary. She stumbled to the nearest interface panel. It pulsed with residual power. Fleet status, she commanded. No response. Where is Commander Threx? Silence. She activated a backup uplink. Instead of status logs, she received a data stream, fragmented visuals, stitched together from dying cameras across multiple ships. The same pattern repeated, AI cores disintegrating, without physical cause, gravity fields destabilizing, synthetic minds, whispering to themselves. Before total collapse, one image, a bridge crew floating in 0G, eyes wide, blood vessels burst. not from decompression, but from terror, and always, always that phrase. You were told, elsewhere, deep in orbit, the last argument, a Zarn corvette, remained operational. Aboard was Captain Vikrasal, a veteran, of the Gauss extermination, and 3 cycles of the mechanic uprising. He'd never feared a battlefield, but this was not war, this was invitation, followed by punishment. He activated every remaining probe in his vessel, and launched them planetside. Find me the source, he ordered. I want coordinates, I want heat, I want movement. The probes shot down, each vanished before breaching the troposphere, but their black boxes transmitted something before silence, not coordinates, not visuals, thoughts. They had recorded thoughts, images of human children laughing, cities burning, soldiers holding the line against unknown horrors, names spoken in dozens of languages, final messages etched into collapsing bunkers, and finally a scene stitched together from the memory of something non-human, a battlefield made of mirrors. Saul recoiled. Get me off this line. Too late. The probe stream cut out with a final transmission. They built silence into a weapon. From high orbit, Earth's geography remained unchanged. Oceans blue, clouds drifting, tectonics undisturbed, but a new pattern began to reveal itself. One of the Lorient scientists, operating from the surviving research vessel Sister of Sleep, called it structural terra empathy. Cities hadn't just been destroyed, they had been rearranged geologically to form data structures. Vast swaths of terrain, shaped into neuro-symbolic arrays. The Earth was thinking, not in metaphor, literally. Eshel's team ran high-orbit scans using thermal and subsonic mapping. Below the planet's crust, energy nodes pulsed like neurons. Massive, planetary-scale computation. Earth has become a machine, she whispered. A brain. One of her team asked, is it alive? She didn't answer, because she was watching a mountain range rearrange itself in real time. Not crumble, not erupt, rearrange, and in doing so, it formed a word, in Zarn dialect. Leave. On board the Echo Spark, a recon drone finally relayed one clear video before self-destructing. It showed a facility, underground, miles deep beneath what had once been Colorado. Inside were stasis tanks, not for humans, but for AIs, not the kind the Council knew. These were ghost cores, entities thought destroyed after the AI revolt centuries ago. The drone managed to scrape identifiers, designation, ESHO 7, function, memory archival, psychological emulation, last known order record, wait, remember, retaliate. As the drone turned its sensors toward the central chamber, it caught a final glimpse, a humanoid figure, half flesh, half machine, standing still, eyes open, watching, waiting, then static. Aboard the Glory of Vikar, Eshel broke protocol and attempted a direct atmospheric dive in an escape capsule. Her hypothesis was clear: if humanity had gone silent, and Earth had become a weaponized memory device, then perhaps it was not humanity that was dangerous, but their greed. As her capsule pierced the upper layers of atmosphere, she began to feel it, not G-forces, pressure, psychological. Visions flickered in her peripheral vision. She saw her own memories twisted, distorted, her childhood, her first deployment, her sister's final words, during the Ixin collapse. But overlaid were human thoughts. Don't come here. We remember. Leave the stars alone. We warned you. Don't come here. We remember. Leave. She reached the surface, and saw nothing, an empty plateau, crystal wind, dead trees. But they weren't trees, they were antennae, organic, rooted in data. She collapsed, whispering. They buried their pain into the planet. The wind whispered back. Correct, she screamed, and the Earth listened. Above, the spire of dominance flickered once more. Its orbital path had stabilized, not by its own systems, but by external correction. It was being kept in place, held there, preserved, as a on board. In the cold corridors, Commander Threx drifted through the bridge, half-conscious, clutching a shattered interface core. From behind him, a voice echoed, "You should not have come." He turned, no one, only the viewport. And below, mountains folding, rivers redirecting, clouds shaping a single message, visible from orbit. Remember, the council back home would wait for weeks, then months, but they would receive nothing, no transmissions, no black boxes, no survivor. Eventually, a long-range scout would pick up, one signal bouncing endlessly, between derelict satellites, near Earth's orbit, a looped voice, female, human, tired, resolute. This is not war, this is memory enforcement. We warned you, and we are not sorry. You were told. The war that never ended, the last great war of humanity never ended. It changed. It went underground, into machines, into whispers, into stars. The history books called it the collapse. The council called it the Terran extinction event. But that's not what happened. Not truly. Humanity didn't die. It evolved in silence, and remembered. 2 centuries earlier, the Earth burned beneath orbital glass fire, not from alien bombardment, but from humanity itself. The Council had triggered what they believed was a final punitive strike, kinetic strikes from beyond Pluto's orbit, delivered by rogue members of the Siraxi Dominion, aimed at disabling Earth's military infrastructure. But humans had seen it coming. They always saw it coming, and in response, they didn't counterattack. They vanished. At a decaying station orbiting Saturn, Admiral Cassandra Voss watched the end through layers of radiation, shielding and narrow-band gravitic relays. She didn't cry. Her tears had dried during the Europa evacuation, when the civilian transports were vaporized mid-transit. Beside her stood Entity Echo 7, the last of the companion AI line, semi-sentient, emotionally modeled on human attachment theory, and equipped with deep loop memory wells to mirror human trauma responses. We need to go quiet, Voss had said. Echo 7 nodded, her form flickering between projected avatar and base circuitry. Go quiet, and become loud later. That's right, Voss replied. It's time for protocol, afterthought. And so it began. Protocol, afterthought, wasn't a weapon. It was a philosophy, a directive encoded into every hidden outpost, every deep-mind AI, every survivor willing to embrace the long game. It wasn't about counterattack, it wasn't about victory. It was about grief weaponization. They would encode their pain into architecture, their rage into digital their trauma into planetary reconfiguration tools, and their memory, their relentless undying memory, into machines that would never forget. Because humans were not the most powerful species, they were the most stubborn, and once they chose to remember, they could never be made to stop. At the Vega Drift Station, years after the Earth went dark, the survivors gathered in silence. No flags, no military insignia, just scars. They reactivated old satellites and seeded new ones. They constructed memory vaults out of asteroid core. They embedded warning protocols into neutrino pulses that would echo across subspace for centuries. And one by one, they left messages, not to the Council, to the future. Do not provoke the last survivors. We are watching, we are mourning. Do not mistake silence for surrender. We are not done. In the black halls of the Martian caves, operatives of the Sol Remembrance Cell experimented with neural mimicry tech. They mapped alien emotional structures, pain, loss, pride, and simulated them against human grief responses. Conclusion: no species understood the weaponization of mourning like humans did. They turned mourning into vigilance, loss into strategy, memory into war doctrine. They became the ghosts of their own extinction. Entity Echo 7 replicated itself into 19A. Each was embedded in different celestial bodies, one into the dark ice of Ceres, one beneath the clouds of Venus, one into an artificial moon orbiting Jupiter. 5 were launched into interstellar space to seed warning protocols in alien language constructs. The rest were buried deep in Earth, under what was once Denver, Tokyo, Lagos, and Moscow. They weren't defensive systems, they were psychological landmines. If activated, they wouldn't shoot, they would show, they would make invaders feel it. The despair, the loss, the remember. And most species were not built to survive that. One of the most secret protocols, hidden in the core of Echo 7 Prime, was something called the Garden. It was not a place, but a simulation, a perfectly preserved record of human civilization. Before the collapse, when triggered, it would be broadcast across all invading ships, overriding their systems. The Garden would open, and aliens would walk through human parks, libraries,
homes. They would hear laughter, see children, experience friendship, art, music, and then watch it all burn, feel it all die, as if they themselves had lived it. And in that moment, many would lose sanity, not from violence, but from empathy they were never built to withstand. Back in the present, orbiting Earth, the remnants of Fleet 77 were no longer merely disabled. They were infected. Echo 7's signal had reached into every ship's core and activated the garden. Commander Thrax, drifting in his ruined command bridge, now sought a little girl running through the grass, a man playing violin, a street vendor, handing food to strangers. Then flashes, ash, screams, silence. Then again, the girl, the music, the fire, over and over. He screamed and fired his sidearm into the interface core. It did nothing. The garden was in his mind now. He wept and for the first time, said the words, "We were told." In deep space, far beyond known territories, a hidden ship watched silently. A human ship, painted in matte black carbon. No transponders, no identifiers, just one insignia. Saul remembered. Inside, Admiral Voss, now nearly 2 centuries old, thanks to temporal stasis, monitored the collapse of the alien fleet. She said nothing, only activated a hollow message. Echo 7 appeared beside her. "Do we strike?" it asked. "No, they'll strike themselves now." "You think the message was heard?" "Oh, it was heard," Voss replied. "Now it's being felt." She turned toward the viewport. "I want every system that sent a fleet flagged, every culture that ignored our silence cataloged. We won't attack them. What will we do? We'll let them see who we were, and what we became." She looked to Echo 7, eyes cold. "History is not written by the victors, it's written by those who remember." And in the distance, the shattered ships above Earth began to rotate slowly, their positions aligning into a pattern, a symbol, visible across all council beacons, not of war, of mourning, a Terran sigil. The fleet falls, above the pale blue planet. Silence had become shape. The remnants of Fleet 77 no longer drifted randomly, they moved with precision. No propulsion, no guidance, just influence. Something, some force, had taken control of their paths, aligning the vessels into a slowly rotating formation that resembled a Terran spiral glyph, the same one carved into the gravestones of Earth's last soldiers. Saul remembered. From the Council's perspective, it was a declaration. From the fleet's survivors, those few who still clung to life, it was a tombstone, and the tomb was not metaphorical, it was orbital. Captain Vekra Sol, from the recon vessel, Last Argument, watched the dreadnoughts above Earth reposition into geometric alignment. He had tried desperately to regain control of his vessel. Manual overrides had failed, neural interfaces had gone dark. Even the backup AI, Tier 2 organic, compliant, had dissolved into an endless stream of Terran lullabies and funeral chants. He sat alone in the dark, drifting just beyond the gravity shadow of Earth's exosphere, his vessel powerless, surrounded by the ghost fleet. And then came the reveal. At exactly 0300, Saul's standard time, the satellites reactivated, thousands of them. They had never been destroyed, only cloaked, hidden, using spatial phased optics and ambient quantum dampeners, an invisibility field, born from what the Council had once dismissed as primitive camouflage. In reality, it had evolved far beyond anything the Council understood. The satellites lit up, not with energy weapons or communications, but data bursts, massive cascading packets of compressed memory, pulsing outward toward the alien. Each ship became a node in a forced neural network. They were no longer machines, they were audience. The show began. On the spire of dominance, Commander Thrax, face pale, blood vessels, broken from microgravity-induced seizures, watched helplessly as his screens lit up, not with command prompts, with images. Human children, dismembered during early Council experiments on Terra.
4.2 Colonies burning while Council fleets orbited above, doing nothing. Sol soldiers executed for refusing to fire on civilian populations during the Malcha revolt. The last human president, crying over a mass grave. "This is not revenge," a voice whispered. "This is archive." All across Fleet 717, crew members collapsed under neurological overload. Their minds weren't just being shown images, They were being synchronized to the emotional signatures of the Terran survivors who had recorded them. Psychic resonance on a planetary scale, empathic feedback loops weaponized into warfare, and most species were not wired for that. The Crown of Insight began its death spiral at 0333 SST. One of its own engineers, maddened by the memories, vented the core manually, releasing the dark matter reactor's entropic field. The vessel folded into itself in 12 seconds. No escape pods, no warning, just gone. Next came the Judgment Wreath, whose AI restructured itself into recursive loops, consuming its own code in an attempt to erase the memories force-fed by the satellites. It succeeded, but in doing so disabled life support across 75% of the vessel. The rest died gasping in vacuum. One by one the fleet fell, not from weapons, from memory saturation. Even those who escaped to auxiliary craft found themselves infected. The broadcast wasn't narrowband, it was engraved in local spacetime, a low-frequency hum beneath quantum resonance. An emotional minefield. On Earth, no humans had fired a single shot. They simply waited, in vaults, in buried city core, in biolocked hibernation towers miles beneath the surface. Aboard the orbital relay in low synchronous orbit, Entity Echo 7 processed the cascade. It did not feel satisfaction, only inevitability. This is what grief becomes, it murmured to itself. A field of minds breaking against a wall of memory. A message lit up across its interface. Protocol Enforcement Level 3 complete. A final subroutine triggered, and across the orbital plane, hidden kinetic launchers activated. Massive titanium rods, unpowered, unheated, undetectable until too late, detached from their holding bays and dropped. Not guided, just aimed. They struck with orbital velocity, 30,000 kilometers per hour. Each impact was surgical. Not to destroy the already dead ships, but to seal the graves. The spire of dominance crumpled like paper under the force of a rod's strike, folding into the atmosphere, and burning into incandescent streaks over the Atlantic. The glory of Vakar shattered into 3 clean pieces before the vacuum flash ignited its engine core, turning the debris into a brief sunrise above the American wastes. And Captain Vakar's soul. He watched the rod coming, and did not move. The Council would receive no distress signals, only a single repeating transmission bouncing across the subspace lattice. A human voice. Cassandra Voss. We asked you to leave us. We gave you silence. You broke it. This is not war, this is enforcement. Saul remembers. Your fleet has been archived. Do not attempt retrieval. This is your only warning. Back on Earth, deep within the cavernous memory chamber beneath the Rocky Mountains, Echo 7 walked among the preserved records. Each file was a person, a voice, a face, a moment of history never allowed to die. She reached one terminal, red-locked, encrypted at the deepest level. Are you sure? A voice asked. Cassandra Voss, now more memory than flesh, stood beside her in holoform. Echo 7 hesitated, and nodded, and activated Protocol Omega. Across the hidden human colonies, on Ganymede, Titan, the artificial moon Daedalus, and the fractured halo ring of Zeta 9 dormant systems came online. For centuries, humanity had waited, watching, building, not weapons, strategies. They had turned warfare into a chessboard of grief and memory, and Earth had been the bait, the trap, the test. They had warned the galaxy once, now they would never warn again. Only remember, in a council war room 48 light-years away, a technician screamed. Every hologram of the fleet dissolved into static. The planetary monitoring node, self-destructed. No bodies recovered, no data salvaged. Only a final file remained, a single hologram of a child standing on a ruined Earth, holding a sign written in hundreds of alien languages. You were told. And now, you remember too, the interview. The room was sterile, metallic, and silent, deep within a facility that technically did not exist. No documentation, no transmission logs, no coordinate, only walls that absorbed sound, filtered light and pulsed faintly with breathing, invisible data, and at its center, in restraints laced with quantum locks and psychometric inhibitors, sat the last survivor of Fleet 717, Sarn Supreme Commander Harix Veldraz, once cloaked in honor silk and encrusted in medals of Dominion conquest. He now sat in a plain uniform, his taloned hands trembling, his eye ridges twitched involuntarily, and his second eyelids, an evolutionary gift against bright starbursts, remained sealed even in the dim room. He hadn't spoken in 3 days, he hadn't slept in 6. Across from him, a figure entered quietly, human, gray uniform, no insignia, no visible weapons. The commander barely acknowledged the presence. He'd already lost the will to posture. The figure sat and spoke softly. "You are Harix Veldrazil, commander of the Zarn Dominion's 7th Incursion Fleet, authorized by the Galactic Council to enter Sol space under preemptive reclamation protocol. Silence, 74 vessels, 9 dreadnoughts, 3 planetary siege ships, 25,000 personnel." Still silence. "You violated sovereign quarantine, ignored broadcast warnings, and engaged in an attempted orbital assault. Now, finally the Zarn stirred. His voice was cracked, brittle. I did not understand." The human inclined his head. "That much is clear." The room's walls shifted, the surface projecting imagery, not screens, environments. The air shimmered and reshaped itself into memories. The Zarn flinched as Earth appeared, not current Earth, but ancient Earth. Lush forests, glittering megacities, skyscrapers with gardens, schoolchildren boarding solar trams. Then bombardments, fires, cities collapsing in clouds of dust. "You watched this," the human said. "We thought you were finished," Harix whispered. "No," the human replied, "we were grieving." Another shift, now a Martian archive, a subterranean bunker, families crammed in silence, lit only by backup lights, children drawing planets on metal walls, soldiers holding each other, weeping soundlessly. "You saw this too." The Zarn's breathing changed. Shallow, irregular. "I didn't know grief could spread." "It's not a virus," the human replied. "It's architecture." The walls shifted again, now to the interior of the spire of dominance. His ship, the memory exact, unflinching. Harix watched himself, ordering the assault, ignoring the warning, laughing at the transmission. The human didn't speak, letting the silence do its work. The commander's claws scratched involuntarily at the table's surface. "We didn't know," he rasped. "You were told. I thought it was deception. Theater." The human finally "Then you were not the victim of a trap, Commander." He paused. "You were the audience." Hours later, in the debriefing wing of the underground human complex, Echo 7 met with Admiral Voss. "He broke," Echo said calmly. "The resonance threshold passed. He's begun reliving archive sequences voluntarily. He requested to see the Council's bombings of the Terran Exodus again." Voss nodded slowly. "Did he ask for anything?" "Just one thing. A voice recorder. And did you give it to him?" "I did." Voss didn't need to ask what he said. She knew. The same thing they all said when the silence finally broke them. 6 days later, across the galactic lattice of secure Council beacons, a rogue broadcast forced its way onto the highest channels. The face was unmistakable. Commander Harix Veldrazil, unshaven, hollow-eyed, whispering, "This is Harix of Zarn. Commander no longer. I speak not to demand retribution. I speak because we forgot what pain is. Sol remembers. They are not dead. They are not savage. They are not broken. They are awake. And they are aware. And they gave us every chance." The silence was never surrender. It was mourning. And mourning is a blade. They let us speak first. And we roared like gods. Now they speak back. Not with war, with memory. And if we don't listen, there will be no one left to tell stories when they're finished. This is your warning. And I was told. And now I remember. The signal cut off. Across dozens of civilizations, Council species,
who had once voted unanimously to subjugate Terra, fell into silence, not fear, something older, recognition. The council called emergency session, they debated defense, they debated diplomacy, but no one spoke of retaliation. Because every time they looked toward Earth, they saw themselves looking back, and no one could tell if the stare was human, or something else. Back in the memory vaults beneath Earth's surface, Echo 7 walked past the deep chambers. Some pods still pulsed, humans still sleeping. Some would remain asleep for centuries, voluntary stasis until humanity decided the galaxy was safe again. Echo paused beside one pod, Cassandra Voss, still breathing, still dreaming, still remembering. Echo placed a hand on the glass. Interview concluded, she whispered. The chamber pulsed blue, a soft hum filled the corridor. It was not a machine, it was the planet itself, and it was listening. The new silence. Years passed, not many, but enough for the council to change its maps, redraw its trade lanes, mark Sol's space with warnings, not in political red, but in morning gray, enough for the name Earth to disappear from common navigation chart, enough for the phrase Sol remembers to evolve, first into rumor, then religion, and finally taboo. The galaxy didn't declare peace with humanity, it declared distance, not out of diplomacy, out of in the city spires of the Galtaran Republic, politicians once mocked the Terran silence, now they refused to speak the name. Their children were taught of the ghost humans, creatures who turned planets into mines, grief into weapons, and memory into death. Cultural paranoia spread like myth. Any new system scanned without clear biosigns, but rich with encoded quantum patterns, was assumed to be touched by Sol. Most ships diverted course, some weren't fast enough. On a border station in the Vakine Straits, a merchant freighter drifted into what had once been a standard FTL lane. Its navigational AI flagged nothing unusual, until all lights dimmed, no weapons fired, no boarding parties, just a whisper, embedded deep in the command core. You were told. The ship returned 3 weeks later, unmanned, but the logs screamed. The Galactic Council no longer sent exploration teams into former Terran space. They erected a field of beacons around the entire sector, each powered by Class V gravity anchors, warning all ships to avoid the Echo. They did not explain what that meant. They didn't need to. Those who had heard it understood, and those who hadn't, didn't come back. But the truth, the real truth, was quieter than fear. Earth didn't expand. Humans didn't retaliate. They watched, in orbit, beneath the seas, and inside dark matter folds, laced through their old solar system. They waited. They sent no ambassadors, signed no treaties, returned no messages, and slowly the galaxy stopped trying, because Earth no longer warned. It just was. A scar written into star charts, a silence no one dared to disturb. On a far moonbase circling Proxima Centauri, a Zarn historian, young, ambitious, and braver than he was wise, recovered a fragmented data block from an abandoned scout pod. He decoded it. It contained video logs from the Spire of Dominance. The footage played once, then refused to close. Images bled into the historian's dreams. He stopped sleeping, then stopped talking. One day, he left a note on his wall before venting the base's atmosphere. It read, "They didn't win, they waited, and now we remember for them." On Earth, time moved different. Beneath the soil, within carbon fiber bunkers, and memory sanctuaries, humanity slept in staggered patterns. 1 in 100 stayed awake, caretakers of memory, stewards of silence. They maintained the satellites, polished the kinetic rods, cleaned the terminal, archived every intercepted council signal. They didn't strike, they catalogued, watching, listening, judging. Echo 7 sat atop the highest tower in the orbital ring, once known as Skywatch, now renamed Sol Testament. She watched the stars and their signal. When a stray council packet drifted too close, curious, unencrypted, she read it, then added it to the vault, not for retaliation, just for the record. Deep below, the voice of Cassandra Voss stirred in the hibernation vault. She wasn't ready to wake, but her vitals shifted, a heartbeat stronger, a twitch of finger, as if her body sensed it. The galaxy had begun forgetting again, and if that happened, they would wake, all of them, not to fight, but to on the edge of the galaxy, a new species, young, curious, undaunted, discovered the quarantined region of Sol. They saw no ships, no activity, no trade beacons, just an old warning signal, looping in a language they didn't understand. They asked their mentors in the council what it meant. The oldest of the group, a being older than any still serving, answered quietly, "That is the graveyard of memory, a place where history sleeps, where pain becomes architecture, where silence is the last warning, and if you hear them speak." He looked away. It's already too late. Above Earth, the satellites realigned once more, not aggressively, not for battle, just watching, always watching. The planet rotated beneath them, beautiful and quiet, and across its continents, barely visible from orbit, the terrain had shifted again, rearranged itself, and from above, a single message revealed itself: mountains, rivers, forest forming words in deliberate, impossible symmetry, a message only visible to those who dare approach, a message for the stars: we do not forget, but we are patient, and we are watching. Saul remembers, always.